Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hey everyone, back with another MiOsc episode. Today we discuss the importance of humbling yourself to be a good student and teacher. I'm grateful to share in these conversations with my favorite human in the world, so stay tuned if you want to hear our usual and fun musings. Thank you all for tuning in to the podcast. If you love it, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Oscar.
Hello.
Wagwan.
Hello, Mimi.
So we are back for another MiOsc episode after our world travels. We didn't get a chance to podcast while we were away, but I did get a chance to do a Patreon post. Thank you to Patreons for being supportive and being patient with me. I have been recording episodes, which is good, getting back on track. Hopefully we'll have some continuity here, but always happy to chat with you, my favorite person in the whole world.
You're my favorite person, and I just want to apologize to all of the fans who've been dying to hear another episode of this.
Well, you know, when you die at the palace, you really die at the palace.
Yes.
All right, bonus points for those who get that quote. Okay, I thought, our regular lifestyle job, etc., we could jump into some concepts about teaching and coaching, being a good teacher, being a good student. We've had a lot of reminders lately as we run the Wallam Temple and the worldwide system, where we get every month our awesome, VA team is like, hey, here are all the birthdays for the month, but more importantly, here are the anniversaries. And it's been really cool because there's two columns of students. One is like sometimes at 20 years, 10 years, 15 years. I've been seeing all these anniversaries of students who have been well over 10 years. And then, you have your 1-year anniversary, your 2-year anniversary, etc. But it's so nice to kind of see that first column where it's just, we've had students that are hanging out with us for quite a long time. So that means there's some success in how they've been as students and hopefully success in how we have been as teachers.
Yeah, we've acclimated them into the cult. Those are the students that have, taken the blood oath.
Oh my gosh.
Sacrifice a small animal. The cuter, the better.
Oh my gosh. All right. Disclaimer, Oscar is completely kidding for those of you listening right now. One of our kids, she's not listening anyway, but we always give her a hard time because she's a real big, animal lover. And we're always teasing about such things. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that as I grew up, I remember so many different grandmasters, masters, sifus, however they're titled, would always ask my dad, how do you have so many students and grand students and how many schools and people that stay with you for such a long time? Because while they may not know everybody's name, they know faces and they're like, wow, we've seen that guy hanging out for 20, 30 years now. And a lot of people would ask him, what is the secret to having good students? I think first, probably I would say it's, being a good sifu equals having hopefully good students. Doesn't mean you're not going to have bad students, unfortunately. But I think that the starting point in terms of how we view things is being a good sifu, being a good teacher, being a good coach and leader. That's probably one of the big ones right there.
Yeah, I would say I agree that in order to have good students, you should be a good instructor, good teacher. In order to be a good teacher, you should be a good student. And so it's this never-ending cycle that just keeps getting repeated over and over again. And sometimes I wonder, are we successful? And sometimes I don't know. When I look back at the success your father has had, it's pretty impressive. It shows what a great teacher he was. And then there's also been a lot of students that have fallen off. But I think there's studies that show that 10% of the population are sociopaths. So if he's only lost 10% of students, that's
Hopefully he's lost the
Pretty good.
sociopaths and
Let's
that they're not the ones that have been here for 30 years and it's just like biding time. Uh,
let's go with that.
okay, yeah, let's go with that. So we've talked a lot about leadership, accountability, being a good teacher. I think it would be useful because we often have, as a matter of fact, a little bit later today, we constantly have them SIFU meetings and instructor meetings, and we kind of it's almost like an AA group. I've never been to one, but I imagine it's like, hi, my name is Mimi. I've been teaching for this long. Hi, Mimi, and so you kind of are in a support group of sorts because not too many people can understand your lifestyle. And one of the things I think that resonates are like the top, I don't want to say pet peeves, but the top questions maybe students ask or things that they say where that reframe, where us learning to be the right kind of teacher and our response to that, and then students learning to be a good student and knowing when and what to ask. Like we are in a very modern time where questions are quote unquote allowed, because back in the day, it's not that questions weren't allowed, they just would never be answered. And they would often be met with impatience, frustration, or discerning look, or just like you just, they'd walk away. So there are a lot of times where Grandmaster Chan would say to us, hey, I was never able to ask my Sifu any question. He would just beat me on the head and then walk away. So I think we are at a different time, and we're not saying questions aren't allowed, but I think in a traditional environment, how do we help students learn what's right and what's wrong?
I don't know. But I was thinking a lot about this because I wrote something to our students of the balance between me and we, and this idea that I am born here in the United States and America and have that American mindset. A lot of it is about the story of what's best for me and how I can accomplish things, and the art that we're practicing being coming from a more Eastern philosophy from China, where it's a little bit more of a we type of mindset of a community, what's best for the group. And so we are fighting those forces all the time of trying to understand where the student is coming from while also trying to teach them part of the culture of the reasons of why things are done. One of the things when it comes to asking questions, yes, Grandmaster Chan has always said, he loves saying, "Why don't you ask Wong Long?" which is the founder of the praying mantis system.
That died like 400 years ago or something like that.
Because at some point he gets tired of getting asked questions, and it comes to this point of I think he does answer questions to his senior students.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So like my kung fu uncle Sifu Bob Rosen, your older kung fu brother, Grandmaster Chan would answer questions that
I
I think
think
now
lately, in the
lately, but
last decade or
last decade.
so, but I would say early on, it was just like,
But one
but a
thing that
language barrier, to be
there's a
fair.
language barrier as well. So that that probably does have a lot to do with it, right? Of maybe there's not a of him wanting to explain it, and probably the best way he explains it is like I just showed you. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, my moves are worth a million, or something to that effect.
and and to your point, I don't want to cut you off, but Sifu Bob actually just said that the other day. Like, well, he never had to really explain too much because he showed us.
Correct. And then also to bring in Sifu Bob as well is he put in the work, and so he actually is very impressive this way in his humility to always be willing to listen and ask questions, but he's also earned the right to ask questions. And something that you have to try to communicate this gently to a new student because they're sensitive and delicate, like a flower, like a snowflake that's just falling from the
And
sky.
we know how much you love snowflakes, Osk.
But I think there's something where they need to understand is like, I could give you the answer, but really you haven't even earned the answer because you've only put in 5 reps. Come back to me a few months later after you've put in a lot of hours, and then we can discuss what the answer is. And maybe really you would have found the answer already. And our job on the teaching aspect is to guide them to make sure that they kind of stay on the path, but also they've got to do some work.
Yeah, to quote our good friend, Coach Dan John, you have not earned the right to be frustrated, can kind of go into the you have not earned the right to ask every single question yet, or, you know, approach the coach in this way. Because I think he just has this really great way of explaining it in his Wandering Weights newsletter, but also just in the way he explains things. But basically, if you haven't done the work, you haven't put in the reps, then you don't really have that right yet to be frustrated, or maybe to even say, hey, I want to ask a question about this. Well, have you tried to practice it yet? No. Okay, well, why don't you do that first? Right. And even like me teaching you not too long ago, you're like, oh, wait, let me get frustrated. Let me figure out if something's not right before you correct it. Cause you're like, I want to try to figure it out because that's kind of the right thing to do. But not everyone has that mentality. So I think when we think about beginner students, our snowflakes, sorry, beginner students, but when you're a
Well, they're
neophyte,
just
you're a
more
neophyte.
delicate, let's just
Yeah.
say.
But I think because culturally and physically, mentally, there's so much happening all at once for them that's new. But I think let's just jump in. Like, I think there's a couple things across instructors that I think are the number one questions that we feel students, one, should never ask, or should haven't earned the right to ask, which is like, show me the next thing. Like, I want to learn the next thing. Well, I already know that. Show me the next thing. So, how is your approach to answering that question?
So if someone were to ask me, yeah, I already learned that, I want to learn the next thing, I try not to laugh in their face because that can be a little bit demoralizing. But I usually will say something, okay, awesome, that's great. Well, let's just see it anyway. And inevitably, you'll find something that they need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at something like a form that has a certain amount of movements and they're at the halfway point and they're asking to learn the new thing, I was like, all right, well, let's just go back a few moves and just show me where you're at. Or let's start from the beginning. Let's get to there. And at that point, you'll see. And sometimes, depending on the student, I would say, let's go a few forms back. So you can always find things to work on with a student. I think that has gotten a little bit more. I think there was a time where we got that a little bit more. We're not getting that as much, like that question of like, well, I know this, I'm ready to learn the new thing. What we may get more of is, I've been on this for a long time, and there's not enough communication from instructor to student to let them know they still need things to work on. And also, there's not enough reflection on the student realizing, I need to keep working on this. And that comes down to people getting bored with doing the same thing over and over again, which is understandable. And us as instructors making them realize that repetition is the father of mastery. So I don't know. I mean, these are all things that are known, and things are the reason things become cliche is because many people say them over and over again, and the reason many people say things over and over again is because they're true.
Correct. I think there's this really fine balance, though, right? Because being the extreme ownership culture that we've created as coaches, as teachers, as SIFUs, as instructors, is that yes, it is the responsibility of the student to start to learn, like, oh wow, I have stuff to work on. I need to be patient, humble, and have that mindset for learning. I think us as instructors then can be better communicators as to why they need to continue the repetitions, what needs to be done, but also in this modern day, balance out the fact that maybe a student can't be on a saping ma for 6 months and have not learned anything else, meaning that all you're doing is sitting in a horse stance. So like, I'll see you in 6 months. We're not in ancient China. So we do have to also realize as instructors, what is the potential for the student? So if we see that they've kind of hit their potential at this moment in time, and there's no more for them repetition wise that's going to benefit, that we have to kind of also give them a second tier to practice. Like I think that's the struggle for a lot of beginner instructors, of not knowing, do I need them to get this perfect or do they need to move on? And that's, beginner instructors, people who just start teaching. We have a lot of students that we bring on as interns, and we start to kind of coach them through it. I think that's one of the biggest struggles they have, is like, well, I mean, now I know when I'm training, my Sifu is very nitpicky and wants to make sure I'm getting all this right. I'm like, right, you're training as someone who's been here over a decade. You're training someone who's been here 10 minutes. So you got to kind of find where that balance is. But you're right. I think we do get the question less now because we've been setting the expectation. We try to tell students ahead of time, hey, in Chinese martial arts, here's what the etiquette is. You're taught at the pace that you're learning, for the reason of trusting your instructor. We've talked about this so much, trust in your Sifu.
Right. So in that same thing I wrote about, the balance between me and we is yes. And I'll give credit to my kung fu cousin, who's actually Sifu Bob's student, Sifu Mai. She has a few schools up in the New England area. She said, I like to think of us as traditionally professional. And I really like that terminology, which is we are embracing the Chinese Kung Fu tradition, but we're also running a business and we're also trying to do things professionally. So you have to find a way to realize, yes, they're students, but they're also paying. They've got to understand the culture. We also have to meet them at where they're at as far as like they're also sort of a customer, but hey, that's not the way we like to think of it here. So there's all this juggling that goes on the instructor slash owner slash admin side that where you're trying to provide the best service that you can while at the same time making them realize yes we are also a traditional martial arts school and it's something that I don't think we succeed in 100% all the time, but I know that we're always thinking about and how we can improve it. And where it gets frustrating is, as always, what gets me most frustrated is when something that a student does and maybe I react right away, but then I reflect back and go, okay, the reason that happened is they didn't get the proper communication, right? And proper communication doesn't mean that you haven't said it before, because it doesn't mean like, oh, I never said this. It means communicating means they understand what you're saying. So this is another really important part of being a teacher is your student is hearing you and you think you're teaching them, but sometimes they're not really listening and understanding what you're saying. So then has learning happened there? Maybe, maybe not. So then an instructor who doesn't reflect gets frustrated because it's like, I've told this person 20 times. Well, fortunately, you are the instructor and you're going to have to find a way to communicate with that student. Maybe that communication that needs to take place is, hey, pay attention to what I'm saying, right? Like listen to what I'm saying. But there is an art in coaching. There's something that some days you go, wow, I really connected. And then there's other days where you, as the instructor, leave frustrated, but you have to realize, okay, I need to just be a better instructor. Don't forget what I said earlier about the 10% sociopaths. You can't help everybody.
Okay, you brought up some really interesting points here because I think part of this, I started off kind of in generalization, but I think a lot of what I'm thinking about is one, helping students be better students, and two, helping instructors, but mainly like our beginner instructors be better coaches. Because I think a lot of complaints I get on the coaching side is, I have said this a million times, I am repeating yourself. I'm like, welcome to being a teacher. You're repeating yourself. And we've even gone as far as saying, all right, Oscar, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to, straighten out your leg and keep your back tall. Can you repeat back what I'm saying to you so that I can understand how you're hearing me? And then you'll say whatever it is you would say.
Yeah, yeah. Bend my leg and bend my back. Got it.
Oh, okay. So clearly there's a miscommunication here. And then even if you say exactly what I told you, which would be,
Straighten out my leg and keep my back straight.
right? And then you go to do it, but you still aren't doing it, there's still a disconnect. So you are able to maybe repeat back what I've said, but then that's not helping. So maybe what's better is for me to just show you, like, I want you to do this and then this, right? And so we've taught our beginner, all of our instructors, the best way to teach is to just show. We have a lot of students where English is their second language. Honestly, I feel like sometimes they are easier to teach
Yes.
for our beginner instructors because they can't rely on their words and they have to just show. And so I feel like that whole being a good teacher, being a good communicator, like is where it's at. And that doesn't always mean with words. So one of the frustrations I think with our coaching team, I mean, specifically at the temple, would love to hear from fellow martial artists or any realm of teaching really. If you have a staff of multiple instructors, we're so fortunate to have a diverse community of instructors at our school, everywhere from teenagers that have been doing this since they were 3 and they're like been in this over a decade with a different perspective, to our more mature population, to, we have our wonderful Tai Chi instructor who's like close to 90 years old, like it's amazing. We have such a wide, diverse community of instructors, and it's amazing that they all have their own, viewpoint and perspective to bring. But what happens then as a student, it's, well, Sifu Oscar showed me this way. I learned it from so and so this way, or you're doing something and it's wrong as the student, and then the instructor is going, who taught you this way, right?
Now you've touched on my two biggest pet peeves. This
Yes.
is very triggering. I can feel my anger rising. Isn't that
The
crazy?
dark side.
So I
Feel
think you're in a senior position. Let's take the kung fu part of the school, and your job is really to make sure that the instructor team is prepared. So you've done over the past few years a good job of bringing in a team, having meetings, saying this is how we want things done. Here are some common pitfalls, common areas of concern that we see. Let's address these things. And you have conversations with the instructors where they feel free to come to you and say, hey, a student was doing this, but I think it's this way. Am I wrong? I still do the same thing. So there's a few instructors, you and myself, CFA 2, and some other CFAs in the school where, let's say, the more junior instructors feel comfortable asking those questions, and kind of like finding the right way to do that. So that takes practice on your end. Well, it takes hard work on your end to build that, to build this community of instructors. Even with that, we still get a student who says, so and so taught me this, inevitably. So, a big thing that we've talked about a lot in our meetings, maybe not here on the podcast, but meetings with instructors, is the importance of when you're teaching, as often as you can, setting the expectation. So, just this week, when I was teaching my Tai Chi group, I said, hey, real quick, we're going to go over this stuff. I just want you all to know that what I'm going to go over is the same thing that all the other Tai Chi instructors want to go over. I may say it in a different way. You may hear it differently because my words are different. And so, what I don't want to hear from anyone is someone else taught me this a different way, because that is not the case. And I'm going to check you right now. And I'm telling you that you need to understand that we're all trying to show the same thing. And your instinct should not be, well, so and so taught me a different way. I understood what this other instructor said in this way, which in my mind is maybe different than what reality is. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's one way that you can, as an instructor, head off potential issues. Always set an expectation of what's going to happen. Always set an expectation with your students of like, this is the way that I'm going to teach, and this is the way that you're going to learn.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot there. One aspect is also that we as a coaching team, it's like we everyone knows this. We don't have our own biological children, but I feel like I've like had a million kids at this point and a million teenagers. But if you as parents don't have that united front, and your child is allowed to have cookies right before dinner. No, no, no. I said they're not allowed to have cookies right before dinner, but if you're not a united front, they will break you down and they will own that house, right? So what's very important to me is that our instructor team is respected as a united front. So even if I would say less than 10% of the time, an instructor actually does show somebody something wrong. Like we've had a beginner instructor go,
Probably 90-10.
oh man, I was mirroring and I didn't remember it was the right hand or the left hand. It is so rare but I have had students adamant, so and so showed me this. I said, I'm willing to bet my left, pinky, which is a pretty big bet, but it's like what students hear, see, think, don't go home and practice, don't practice right that they're on the spot. They're the neophytes, right? The percentage, like you said, is probably in the 90% that they are not remembering, recalling, or doing it right, or have went home and practiced incorrectly and come back and swears so and so taught me like this. But it doesn't really matter. Like even if a student says that, it's like, okay, well, that's fine. This is what you think you've heard or you think you've learned. Let's go over it. And I'm telling you it's like this. And then you have a discussion privately with your instructor team just to make sure that you're not in the 8%, 10% where, hey, I wanted something done this way and I saw you doing it this way. Or, there is times where someone will come and go, oh my gosh, I had, XYZ student today and I totally was mirroring and I used the wrong hand. My bad. Write a note. We'll fix it. It's fine. Like those instances are so far and few, but
I
the
think 90-10
instances,
is right.
yeah, I think 90% of the time a student is remembering wrong, wants to blame someone else because they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed that maybe they don't have it right and they want to swear up and down like I learned it this way. One thing we always remember too is we have this gorgeous, like I said, diverse dynamic. Like just looking at my Kung Fu brothers at the school, I've got Sifu 2 and Sifu Marcus. They are literally polar opposites. Sifu 2 is coming in at 5 feet. Sifu Marcus is like 6 foot. Totally different build. Everything's very different. They both do different weaponry, different ways. If they were to do a simple movement, it looks completely different
To a beginner, especially.
to a beginner because their body type is different. Your body type is different. So even if there are nuances and everyone adds a little bit of their own flavor, like people need to realize that it is the same thing. We're telling you to defend and to attack. We're telling you the same principle, but learning to communicate that to a beginner is challenging.
So, yes, this is where now, again, I'll put you as the role of the senior instructor in charge of a group of instructors, where your role is so important to not take the power away from all of your junior instructors, right? If someone comes up to you and says, people have come up to me, same thing, I've taught something and they said, oh, so-and-so taught me that differently. And because I hate this next part so much, I hate if I were to say, who taught you that? Like that is so cringeworthy to me that I sometimes jokingly go, who taught you that? I'm gonna get the broadsword, I'm gonna chop their arm off. Like, right? Jokingly, and I go, no, I'm just kidding. And then I'll say it. But if you were to do that as a senior instructor, what you've done is taken away
Authority,
from your assistant instructor,
which we have to work really
really
hard to
hard.
give them.
You've taken away from the student to the instructor. The student loses respect for that person,
Yes.
right? There's so much damage that is done there, and that's why I'm so opposed to that question. Who taught you that? I think it lacks so much just common sense knowledge to ask that question when you are in a position of authority. A better thing is like how you said, all right, I understand, I hear what you're saying, let's just see. Okay, here's what I want you to do, and just go through it. And then later on, as an instructor team, say, hey, I'm noticing some things, there's some disconnects here, let's just make sure we do it that way. But I wouldn't even at that point start pulling in students and then making them, not students, pulling in instructors and then start saying, you show me this, you show me that. I think it's better if you're trying to build a cohesive unit of an instructor team that is going to be able to work independently, right? To have a conversation saying, here's the way I want it done. I've noticed some things. Does anyone have any questions? Let's go through it. But there has to be, and this is again goes to this extreme ownership, the book. There is one of the principles, which is cover and move. Cover and move means that you're taking care of your partners, that you're taking care of your team. So if you ask, if a student tells you and says, this is the way so and so taught me, who taught you that? Or I learned it this way, who taught you that? Then what you've done is the opposite of cover and move. What you've done is taken your assistant instructor and you've put them in the line of fire to get shot, right? So those two things, the question, the apprehension from the student saying, well, so and so taught me this. Well, you need to check the student and make them realize the bigger picture. But then the person of authority, in this case, someone like you, so important that they cover and move, that they protect the team from the student body, so that everyone is respected, and then we inevitably will be able to teach more students.
Yeah, I think this is actually really great because I think 20 years ago, maybe even longer, that was me. I was like, all right, who taught you that? They're wrong. But that was because I was probably less confident as an instructor to make sure, like, well, it wasn't me. I need to find out who it was and fix this to make sure.
Never you, by the way. Always been perfect.
To make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I was so concerned and I wanted to be on top of every single instructor and be there right there while they were teaching, fix it right away. And I have like changed that philosophy so much where it's like I've watched some of my beginner instructors, never to the detriment or safety issue, but I have literally watched going, oh boy, we're going to have to like talk about this later, but we'll talk about it later, because if you don't allow assistant instructor to grow and learn and make the mistakes and then come back and tell them that, like, hey, in the same way it was okay as a beginner student for you to not get it right and not remember and not to give yourself performance anxiety, as a beginner instructor, it's okay that it's not perfect, but let's fix it. Here's what we could have done better. Here's what we did well. And here's what we're going to do moving forward. Like, I've been so much better about, like, well, we're going to watch this, not a train wreck, but we're going to watch this happen and let it go, as long as it's safe, as long as it's going to be fine. Because let's be real, the student isn't really going to remember the full experience. And then to allow my my assistant instructors to grow in that way. And the second thing is to realize I need them. I need them to be the eyes and the ears. I need my teenagers, 16, 17-year-olds, to connect with that 5-year-old. That 5-year-old thinks I'm 1,000. One kid told me they thought I was 200 years old. And I was like, close. But I'm so disconnected from them. But then they see this teenager, doing iron bridge and walkovers and jumping in and out of splits. And they're like, I want to be like that. I want to be like my older Kung Fu sister or brother. And I need them to have that connection. So I need to empower them. I need to give them the authority and the credibility. And if I ever take that away by making a student feel like this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, oh my gosh, then that's not going to help me in the long run. I'm not going to have students who respect instructors. I'm not going to have instructors who want to be there because they've felt like they've been in the line of fire, as you say. But that has been a learning process. I would say as a 19, 18-year-old, I was probably that instructor that just wanted to be right, that wanted to be on top of every single person, not just because I want to be right, but I wanted it all to be right. And I thought I could be everywhere all at once. And that's just not reality either. Like, if you are allowing people to help you teach, that means you trust them to do what they need to do and help those students at that time through their journey.
And trust them to make mistakes.
And be okay with it. That's the hard part, because as a perfectionist type, it's very hard to watch the train wreck, or hard to go, man, I've told these instructors this. I mean, there's stuff that we go, come on, guys, even on like how we take attendance. I'm like, come on, we've done this millions of times. I can get a little frustrated sometimes, right? But at the same time, always kind of bringing that back. So one, students need to learn, you put in the numbers, trust in your team, know that there's so much going on in the background to help all of our instructors be better martial artists, be better teachers, for us to learn to be better martial artists, be better teachers. It's like you said, it's full circle. It's one and the same.
Yes, there's been times where walking through, seeing assistant instructors teach, and then at the end of class, I'll go up to them and say, hey, real quick, just remember that it's a block this way, this way. I think I saw you do it that way, but I'm not sure. Just keep that in mind. And sometimes that assistant instructor will say, oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I did that wrong. I'll make sure I correct it. Or they'll say, yep, I did it wrong, but then afterwards, the second time I fixed it. So this is why it's so important that you don't take that power away from the instructor right there where you correct it. I kept using that covered move analogy. I don't know why. In my mind, what flashed was this beginning scene of Total Recall, where he's
I think
running.
you just saw it the other day.
Because I just saw the beginning part. He's running up the escalator, getting shot at, and he grabs some dude and just turns around and uses him as a shield. Pop, 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 pop. Then he turns around and another guy's come, pop, pop. Like, that is the analogy that came up, is like, you taking the assistant instructor, using him as a shield.
And then throwing their body over.
Right. Then, getting shot from the back and then throwing the body at them, right? So,
and let's be clear, this is the Arnold Total Recall, because I think there's a new one.
I don't know if there is, but the Arnold one is a classic.
It's a classic. So it's so crazy. It's such a classic.
But I have, and on another side, I've also been teaching, and said, I wonder if this is right. And then I'll come back and I'll talk to you or to Sifu too, and I'll say, hey, this move on this thing, and they'll say no, and I'm like, damn it. And I'll try to run out and say, hey, real quick, that thing I showed you, I was wrong. I just want to show you this move real quick.
Yeah.
Or I'll make a mental note to say, hey, let's make sure we correct it. So this is where, to your point, when you're a younger instructor, there is a little bit of not understanding that your ego is just always in the way. Like, now I understand, I know that my ego is always in the way. Before, I didn't even know.
Right.
At least, like, I fail all the time. My ego's there, always there, but at least I know it. And sometimes I know it as it's happening, and I'm like, damn it. Sometimes it takes a few seconds, sometimes at the end of the class, but I know. coming up as an assistant, first starting to teach, you didn't even know. You
You're like,
just
yeah, I got
your
my
ego.
red shirt. I'm looking good. Remember
Right.
my newbies? I had these kids. They're like our children. And the first time they got their red shirt, I'm sitting there in my office and they're just
It's like a
walking
peacock. It's a
in
peacocking.
in front of the door, back and forth, like showing their red shirt. Like, because
Yeah.
our instructors get to wear the red shirt just so that
After a
we
certain
can,
time.
after a certain period of time, just so that students can quickly, easily identify them. We like to have a uniform, that type of thing. It's not a color rank or anything. It's just because red's good luck. And but it's a quick identifier to be like, hey, these guys are the people you go to for questions. We have a lot of students that come on different days. I mean, honestly, there's some instructors that haven't met some of the students yet because they just don't frequent the same day. So it's like, it's just a nice indicator. But it's so funny because they're just like, check me out. I'm looking good. I'm feeling good. And then they go to teacher and they're like, holy crap, I don't know how to light the incense. I had kids that have like put the incense in upside down on their first day. And I'm like, gosh, I didn't realize we needed to teach how to light incense and put them
Hey,
in.
listen, I always to when I we have meetings with new instructors, like one time it was hot and I used to think I like the sweat and I'm doing my Buddha hand breathing exercise and I'm sweating. And then when it's time for the straight leg kicks, I slipped on my own sweat. I should have just turned on the fan, right? This is me as an instructor slipping in the front of the class, right? So we all make our mistakes, but to your point of like how you taught at 19 and how you teach now, it is
Even
vastly
13.
or right or even as you taught in your 20s or 30s
Yes.
to now you're
Yes.
it's constantly changing, and not just that but also how you're leading and how you bring in what I call the fire or the what's the proper word, the nuclear option, right? So like in the past I think it came along a lot more,
Yeah,
right?
nuclear, it was like 0 to nuclear.
Boom, and then everyone else.
Ludicrous speed,
Right, so
go.
you have a group of let's say 20 people and one person was about to get hit. I'd always say it's don't get hit by the shrapnel with your eyes, just look away. So, but that happens a lot more rarely now, and I think it goes to show the evolution of your leadership style of understanding that there are times, yes, you have to, you got to pull and push, but also that you can't be that way all the time because then it will lead to you won't have the right type of cohesion, right? So, but I think that comes from, as you've shared many times, many years of therapy, having conversations about how you want to grow as an instructor, and the challenges for other martial arts or any other instructor is when you're the one man team or you're only relying on yourself and not even having that reflection to talk on. So there's a difference if you are the solo instructor and you have a group and the head honcho, right? I'm in charge of all of these students and you teach and you're trying to do the best job. It's a little bit different with the position you're in now, which is yes, you're the head instructor. Yes, there's a lot of students, but also there's now in front of them a big group of instructors. So you're trying to teach students, you're trying to teach instructors how to be instructors, and the benefit to that on both ends is their self-reflection. How can I teach a student and expect them to do this thing if I don't do it myself? How can I ask one of my assistant instructors to teach this way if I don't then self-reflect and try to do that myself? And so that is a huge benefit to building a team that you lead and that you're trying to do that with. And it's very challenging if you consider yourself the solo person who's in charge of everything, that the buck stops here, which in your case the buck does stop there. But you have to also surround yourself to the points that we're talking about with a team. You have to give them the freedom to make mistakes. You have to be there to support them. So it's very challenging. It's something that's a balancing act, a juggling act, and I think your skills in that have greatly improved. But the really cool thing is you always also realize, just like all of us, like yeah, we still got a long way to go.
I think a big reason that I don't go nuclear right away is because I'm just so tired.
Because of
My
age.
age.
Because of age.
Well, what's funny is this. So I've got my students who now have their own schools and have their own students. So they're teaching my grand students. So I got Hip and Matt, my guys. And one time they were in town, or Hip was in town, and it was after a show and I was doing a debrief and I'm telling these students like, here's all the things we did really well, but here's where we failed. And I think my current students thought they were getting yelled at. they thought that there was this very negative. They thought they were down on themselves. They're getting lectured. And I finish and they leave, and I know they're like frustrated because, I laid into the things that needed improvement. But we also went over the successes, and I asked him, I'm like, oh, were you tuned in? He goes, God, that was like the nicest conversation I've ever seen you give to a student body before, because it was nothing like the way you would talk to us, right? And so he had me in the early 20s phase of my life where I feel like a big part of that isn't just the tired. I was kind of kidding. I mean, kind of not really. But also as a female instructor in the Chinese martial arts, I feel like I had to project a certain image, a certain level of ferocity, a certain dynamic in order to be taken seriously. And so that's like my own, not issues, but my own challenges that also kind of layered into that dynamic of why I also don't get to just be the nice guy at the school. I don't get to be the, good cop ever, right? I don't ever get to be that persona. It's not really my place in life, but also because there's a lot there with having to navigate in a very, very, very male dominated field.
Yeah, I've actually witnessed, this is not disparaging to Sifu 2, who is probably one of the kindest human beings on the planet, and also amazing martial artist. But he is so nice that he sometimes finds it challenging to have a difficult conversation with a student on something that is just like basic, hey, these are the rules. He's
Yeah.
gotten a lot better, right? Yeah,
Sorry,
we've
you
all,
don't have your sash. You can't do
right.
class today. He doesn't like to break bad
He
news.
doesn't like to be
He
bad news.
doesn't like to be the
And we're
bearer of
like,
bad
hey,
news.
we've got kung fu shoes for a reason, and I remember
Yeah,
recently,
you have to wear these
a couple of
shoes.
years ago, we got back from a trip, first class. You noticed a student with the shoes, like, yo, what's up with those shoes? And I thought you were so nice because what you said was like,
Yeah, I'm
hey,
sorry. Those aren't
sorry, those
those
aren't
aren't
equal shoes. Just bring a doctor's
those aren't
note.
part
Yeah,
uniform,
but keep doing the class. It's no, like there was just, it was to me so benign. And
It was like hip saying how I was speaking to the students so nicely, and they were all
like I
like
looked up and
crying in
go,
the
wow, that was so
corner.
nice. And that was my first instinct. Come to find out, this guy got his feelings so hurt he wanted to quit. This is one of our like a little bit more advanced students, right? And you realize, to your point, that challenge where that student maybe not even realize the dynamic of male and female. Like, well, no, I'm not a special person. Yeah, dude, you thought you were special, and you thought you could do something, and then you got called out on it by Sifu Mimi because unfortunately she is the one who has to usually deliver the bad news because everyone else is a little bit too nice, and so we've also had to
I
have
don't even know that it's that everybody's so nice. I think that lots of people are not comfortable
correct. I was going to say
in
that.
that
Not so nice.
having
You're
uncomfortable
right.
conversations.
You're correct on the
Whereas I can
terminology.
do it, it doesn't mean I love to do it. It's just
I think you're
I
right.
have that ability
It's
to be
not
like, well,
niceness.
we're just gonna go there.
It's we have to have a conversation that may be challenging. And I've actually
Lean into uncomfortable
I try to lean into
situations.
it, and the way that I know to do it is because my instinct is I don't want to do it. Right? I'm like, oh, this is going to be uncomfortable. So anyway, to that point, that particular student was, in my opinion, being kind of like a little bit of a baby, right? Because he got called out, right? But I remember even this past year, another student in the morning went up to Sifu 2 and said, hey, 2. And I went up to the student and I was like, oh man, this is going to be tough. Do you mind if I have a quick thing with you? And he's like, yeah, no problem. And I said, I got to tell you, this is actually, I'm a little bit anxious about it because this is uncomfortable, but I'm going to say it anyway. You can't call him 2. He's Sifu 2 to you. And I went into the whole reason, but I actually preface it with like, I'm actually kind of uncomfortable saying this because it's not my nature to bring up this thing, but this is just straight up how it is. And so this is another thing for me personally where I've tried to listen to the feedback that my body's giving me. And sometimes because I know didn't grow up leaning into things that are uncomfortable, that if I start
Read in the
feeling
corner.
that if I start feeling discomfort, it may be to my benefit to listen more and lean into that more and then go, okay, I'm not comfortable doing this. I guess I really probably should do this then. And that's been a years long process to the point now where I am a lot more comfortable. Where I'll be like, yeah, what are you talking about? Get out of here with that
I actually
nonsense.
think you do a really great job because
But I think I mask it well. But there's this thing. If I reflect, I go the creep ramping up of like, ooh,
Hmm.
this is okay, let me just go ahead and do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But doesn't it always feel better after and you
Oh
realize
no,
it
of
wasn't as
course.
bad as I thought it was going to be?
I would say this is one of the biggest lessons I learned from you over 30 years that
30.
we've known each other is just do it. Like just do the thing that needs to get done,
Band-Aid.
and it does always feel better. And I think, you grow up a certain way with certain habits, very important moments of your life that shape you as a person. And so even at 47 years old, those things are still there, right? So you have to then this is the beauty of martial arts if you look at it the right way is this act of self-awareness and understanding and trying to reflect back onto yourself and so you try to to realize there I go, I made a mistake yet again. And to bring it back to like this point of like trying to find the things where we get frustrated with students or maybe with instructors is it comes down to communication, because if you can communicate correctly where you can see where they're coming from, they can see where you're coming from, most things get resolved. Because if they wouldn't be there as students, if and we wouldn't be there as instructors if we didn't all have kind of very similar goals. We're just different people, but yeah. So
Okay, I love all that. And I think I was talking earlier about the Sifu support group, but honestly, I think this is just like our support group. Like you and I get a chance to hash things out and go, yeah, yeah, and that. But in all seriousness, you kind of mentioned it really quick, and I want to just circle back to it, which was the evolution of my style of teaching and leading has significantly changed, not just because I'm tired and I'm old and all of that, but you're right, it is a lot of work. So, therapy is huge, meaning a check and balance. So, if you just keep moving through and doing the same thing, you're going to get the same result, right? And so if you don't want the same result, so if it's working for you, to quote your favorite, like, in fitness, well, how's that working for you? If you're fine and you don't want to change your habits because everything's working perfectly, then you don't have any work to do, right? But for me, I kind of see the world and see my place in it and how I want things to be. And I know that out there externally, they're not just going to magically change. And so that means I have to reframe or I have to learn to navigate that better. And so it is a constant challenge and constant journey of work and effort and putting one foot in front of the other and just trying to progress all the time. And sometimes it is two steps forward and one step back, but
or
it
one
is
step
not
into the
easy.
mud, you're
Yeah.
just stuck.
I mean, it is. And the thing is, and whatever the thing is for you, maybe therapy is not for everybody, but like, I definitely think that if you are in a position of leadership where you have a lot of responsibility and a lot of people relying on you, then it is also your responsibility to take care of yourself, to keep yourself healthy, to constantly ask questions and question your actions so that you can do the best by your students and the people relying on you. So where I was kidding about this whole support group, but I'm fortunate I have you to bounce things off of. Okay, Oscar, did I go nuclear too soon? You're like, not soon enough, or whatever the
Well,
case may be, right? So like having that, you and I having that ability to kind of bounce those ideas and come home and just go, okay, was I crazy here, or are they the 10% sociopath, right? Like just having that partnership is essential for me. So
yeah, I was thinking along the same lines where I don't have therapy, but this is one way of like, you verbalize things. Also, you
next
talk
time
with
you're going to see Oscar like on a couch, like, tell me
um,
more.
but it all comes down to this, the most important thing in life are the relationships that you have, right? So the relationship we have makes me want to be better, right? I keep thinking I always, not always, whenever I decide I've done something wrong, usually it's the context of like, wow, what would Mimi think of the way that I acted or thought of this? This is not the right way to have done that thing. And so if you have the right relationship with someone, husband wife is
Who will
one
be
is
very honest, brutally honest.
husband wife is one way, but also student teacher is another way. So like if you find that you're any student out there, if it's a Wallem student or any martial arts student, you find yourself in a position where you're in a martial arts school and you respect that your teacher, your sifu, your sensei, whatever that person is, then you, in effect, will, if you reflect correctly, will try to be better because you don't want to let that person down, right? And so it does come down to this. It's always about the relationship. I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let my students down. I don't want to let my family down, right? And then realizing like, okay, yep, I did, I did let them down there, but realizing like you're just a constant work in progress.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's the theme of like most of our conversations.
Work in progress. We're just going to call this one work in progress.
Constant work in
Thank
progress.
you for the podcast title. I just want my listeners to know I love doing these podcasts. The thing I really don't is right after we hit cut and I hit stop, then I have to go, what am I going to name this? What did we talk about? What is the little intro part? Like I'm always, I don't know. It's just, a little insider information for you.
I'm glad I don't have to do it.
So work in progress. Love to hear from all of you. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, thank you to my co-host, MiOsc episodes. And again, shout out to my patrons. You guys are awesome. I've had a lot of people join recently, even as free members, which is great. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of a blog post, but honestly, unless you donate, you're not going to get that exclusive information. So I have been posting things and I'm going to continue doing so. And also it really, really does help keep this podcast going and all the efforts and things I'm doing. So those of you who have hung in there with me for so long, wow, thank you so much. You're amazing.
Who taught you to cross your legs like that? Tell me who taught you that, because that's wrong. Let me show you the right way. I'm just kidding.
All right, until next time. Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.